Être un bon traiteur, c'est être intransigeant sur la qualité. On ne fait du bon qu'avec le meilleur. C'est être impitoyable sur les recettes. Quand c'est bon, il n'y a rien à ajouter, rien à enlever. C'est être irréprochable sur le goût. Il faut prendre du plaisir pour en donner. Voilà, pour être un bon traiteur, il faut être intraitable.
Parfaitement intraitable.
Être un bon traiteur, c'est être intransigeant sur la qualité. On ne fait du bon qu'avec le meilleur. C'est être impitoyable sur les recettes. Quand c'est bon, il n'y a rien à ajouter, rien à enlever. C'est être irréprochable sur le goût. Il faut prendre du plaisir pour en donner. Voilà, pour être un bon traiteur, il faut être intraitable.
Parfaitement intraitable.
Ultimate GT Sprint Cup action about to get underway in Paul Ricard with the first of 2 qualifying sessions to set the grid for races 1 and 3, and will be followed by a second qualifying session that will set the grid for races 2 and 4. It's the final weekend of the Ultimate Cup European Series in 2025. In terms of GT Sprint Cup, the vast majority of the championships already sewn up and were done so back in either in Magny-Cours or have been settled pre-event here, with certain drivers not being present here. So starting off with the overall championship, that went to Lyle Schofield in the SR&R Ferrari 488 Challenge Evo. That he is traded in for a 296 for this final weekend. He also wins the Ultimate Cavallino Tridente Cup for Italian machinery. In UCS2, well, I believe that's gone to Alexis Berthe, who is here this weekend. Initially was due to be in a Bentley Continental GT3 car from the CMR squad, but sadly the engine blew in that one, so he's traded that in for his more trusty Super Trofeo car. So it's Pierre Macchi, who I think would need to win 2 races and still would be shy on the count back there, so that should be good for Alexis. And then in UCS3, none of the usual contenders here, so Jeremy Merrier from Switch Racing, and so that French squad in their first year of circuit racing managed to come home with a title. And then in UCS4, it's Pierre Aru who's won that one. The only title left up for grabs is the UCS1 category for GT3 cars, and that is Olivier Morahan, who leads that by 16 points at the moment from Gregoire Benedet, who is here this weekend, as we have the green flag now being waved, the green light at the end of pit lane. The car's released for this 15-minute session, and it will be the 2 best times that set the grid for races 1 and 3. Your best time setting the grid for race 1, and then your second best time for race 3. And as you can already see, a flurry and a great mix of different machines here this weekend. The cars, basically anything with a roof. That goes all the way from top-class GT3 machinery all the way down to entry-level midgets or Alpine A110s. None of those here this weekend, but what we do have is the return of the Racetivity run Mercedes C63 DTM car, which technically is a touring car, but still very welcome here, and well, will more than likely be the fastest thing on the racetrack. We saw Eric Debard and Hugo Chevalier run that car at this event last year, one of the few tracks where you can still run that car, as it breaches the noise limit at most tracks. They found that out the hard way in Magny-Cours last year. So hopefully it'll run a little bit smoother than it did for them in Magny-Cours with their X-Matic 4 GT, which sadly was unable to run throughout the weekend, but we should get the glorious sight and sound of the C63 at the very least. It's the ex-Lucas Hour car that they have with them, which ran in 2017 and 2018. we were due to have 2 Bentley Continental GT3 with us. So the first one from CMR mentioned the engine blew out, so that's been traded for a Super Trofeo. And then sadly, the second car from 2B Autosport crashed this morning at the hands of Jeremy Calançon, who's sharing the car with his father, Philippe. Jeremy, the performance director at the Mahindra Formula E team, and I was very much looking forward to having a long chat with Jeremy about his illustrious career in motorsports engineering, but sadly it's an early trip home for the 2B squad. So it is 5 GT3 cars then that will take to the field. 2 Mercedes AMG, that includes from the Kennel Racing team, Olivier Morahan trading his Callaway Corvette for the AMG. And then the second one coming from the Historic and Race Cars outfit with Jérôme André. That is the sort of historic arm of the Ecodis ASP squad, and I'm told they will be racing in the SRO's new historic Series 4 next year, which I'm very much looking forward to seeing some classic machinery out there. Yellow flags out at turn 1 already, by the looks of it. Track map's not showing any cars in that general vicinity, but could be some debris out there. Well, maybe a spun car, because we've already got green flags out there. So yeah, in terms of other GT3 cars, we have some unusual stuff as well. A Lamborghini Huracan, the David Favre car that we saw last time out in Magny-Cours. And speaking of David Favre, he was the one who spun and rejoined at turn 1, according to my timing screen. Elsewhere, so some slightly more unusual cars. The Ferrari 430 at the hands of the FE Squadra Corsa outfit, which I'm told that car, despite being some 20-25 years old, has only raced in Ultimate Cup and its predecessor V2V. Another yellow flag at turn 1 very briefly there, so I'm struggling with that one. And then lastly, in the top class, the Renault RS01. So Craft Racing bringing 2 of those cars. One racing here in the Ultimate GT Sprint Cup, the other racing in the Kennel GT Endurance Cup finale on Monday. And I think it's rare to see one of the RS01s anywhere in the world these days, so to have 2 of them in one track on one weekend, that is that is quite special. So the second car to have spun, I'm getting a load of them coming through. So car 100 has spun, which is the Kessel Racing Ferrari 296 challenge of Lucas Azzoto, and then the other car was the 350, which is the SR&R Maurizio Fondi 488 Challenge Evo. In terms of those challenge cars, there are 3 of them. 3 of them being the 296, so that is the Maurizio Fondi one, is the only of the previous generation 488 cars. And we mentioned Lyle Schofield, he has moved up into the current car now for this weekend. Elsewhere, 5 GT4 cars, 2 Audis, 1 Aston Martin, and 2 of the 981 Porsche Caymans, which is the previous model from the 718. And in terms of updates, I want to say it's about 4 updates from Porsche ago now. 2 Lamborghini Super Trofeo, or actually 3 I think now, with the inclusion of Alexis Berthe. 6 Porsche Cup cars and 1 DTM car that we saw flash through the field. Claire Cottingham joins me in the commentary box here. Claire, what's it like out there? The sun's setting now, temperature starting to drop a little bit?
Bit of a kick up there from car 16. No, it was much cooler throughout the day when we had cloud cover, and actually it's going to get cold. As we know in this area, it gets cold at night. It can be nice and mild during the day, and it hasn't been like, we've worn jackets for most of the day really, haven't we? But it hasn't felt like, you know, I haven't felt frozen. We've still got the aircon on in this tiny weeny little commentary box that seems to be keeping all the heat in for some reason. So no, it's nice. The sun starting to set might cause a few issues a little bit out there because the sun is in a really precarious situation. If you've ever driven in when it starts to become dusk, you start getting these weird shadows that start forming over the track, and it all becomes a little bit harder to kind of see out there. And I know I especially don't particularly like driving at this time because you're a bit like, it does something to your eyes. They'll have obviously the visor, you know, maybe on their helmets they'll have something on the visor that might stop that, but most of them probably don't. You just have to deal with it, really.
I'll tell you, it's one of the few reasons you do run a visor, even in a closed canopy cars, and GT
the
cars,
glare
is for tinted visors. One of the benefits there. Jimmy Lemunier there in the Renault RS01 that we saw moving slowly earlier in the lap, but that is the fastest car on track at the moment. Lemunier, the ex-Vortex racer, and I believe that this is the car that we saw Emmanuel Collard and Charles-Henri Samani race in Mugello last year.
this year as well they've raced it, haven't they?
Were they in Mugello as well? See, I wasn't there, so I forgot about that one. But Collard and Samani racing together again here this weekend, but in an LMP3 car in the European Sprint Prototype Cup. So, yeah, that was a slow lap for Lemunier, 2:34.1 compared to a 2:05.9.
This is a big field.
It is a big field, bearing in mind that we had one car take the checkered flag in race 4 in Magny-Cours, to suddenly have 25, well, down to 24 now with the demise of the 2B Autosports Bentley.
Yeah, this is a great map. So I just suddenly looked up and I was like, Lyle Schofield wasn't leading the way.
Yeah, in fact, he hasn't actually. Oh, no, I think he's just popped in a time.
I'll tell you for free, Lyle has been telling me all season that he would like to have some more competition out there. How's that for you?
Yeah, he's got it now, isn't he?
How's them Zapples?
Hugo Chevalier going 3 seconds quicker than anyone else in the DTM car. That is very much to be expected. He is the coach of Eric Debard, who he shares that card with, the Debard Automobiles aficionado. It is really cracking to have the DTM car back out there, and everyone really loves seeing it and hearing it, especially as well. In fact, it's the orange car just coming towards us down the Mistral now. It's barely been touched, particularly the exterior, since it stopped competing in 2018 in the hands of Lucas Auer. It's still got the Get Well Robert Wickens sticker that Mercedes put on there after his horrifying Pocono crash back in 2018 that paralyzed him. But this really impressive machine, a 4-litre V8 at the front of it, churning out about 500 brake horsepower, DRS capabilities as well. Ooh, that wasn't so great. That was rounding out a couple of the slower cars and ended up having to drive off the track. Pierre Arou's Audi was one of the cars involved in that one. But a cracking machine nonetheless. And yeah, so that DRS will be able to open that up on the straight and gain 15 kilometers an hour. In fact, you can see the rear wing open on this straight there as well. Last year this was a sort of invitational car, but it has been classed as UCS1. But I could quite confidently say that that car will be quicker than anything else out there. More issues for the number 20. The
Jean-Paul in the Porsche.
Paul Dominici, the Chazelle technology Porsche, spun and rejoined at turn 7, which is the kink coming onto the Mistral. So see, this is the biggest problem that Chevalier is going to have, which is traffic, because he's so much quicker than everything else out there. And the rear wing pop open there, don't need too much of a slipstream. Although, actually, that being said, the Ferrari Challenge car might actually be one of the few things that can beat that DTM car in a straight line, because that thing has damn near 700 brake horsepower. clears a couple of cars into the chicane. And, rounds out the Kessel Run car. You can see in the shot one of the Porsche Cup cars that just went through the picture, the previous generation, the 991.2. Which it's so funny seeing some of the older machinery out there, because you think, you look at a car and it's contemporary, you think this is the cutting edge of what's possible, but then they come out with something new and you look at it a few years later and actually it looks more like a kid's toy than a proper race car. Lyle Schofield, the white 353 car that we can see here, 4th fastest at the moment. Our overall champion and Ultimate Cavallino Tridente Cup champion of 2025. And looks like he's bound for pit lane in this one. We are coming up to the end of the session. It's only 2 minutes left on the clock. So it is Hugo Chevalier at fastest, unsurprisingly. Jimmy Lemunier, though, closer than I thought the Mercedes would have been. I do wonder if there's a little bit of untaming of the Renault that's been done, because in its GT3 homologated format, it was detuned and weighed up. But when Renault Sport first devised the RS01, it was supposed to be, for one-make competition and a little bit quicker than GT3 cars, I think. Certainly lighter and more powerful. So that's interesting to see. We've got Jérôme Andre in the Mercedes. That is 3rd fastest. Lyle Schofield, Seb Lejeune, top of the Porsche Cup runners for his eponymous team. And Seb Lejeune returning to the racetrack where he had his awful crash at the start of this year in the Renault GT Endurance Cup, which didn't really seem to do much damage to him. I think he was back in the car a couple of weeks later in the Creventic 24-hour series. We've also got Maxime Lieutenant in the Alliance Passion Racing Super Trofeo car, former Legends racer. Henri Desertot in the 76, which is the Schumacher IMSA Porsche car, sharing that car with his brother Simon, and both of them the sons of Franck Desertot, who we're used to seeing out in the Novas during Ultimate Cup weekends. Olivier Morahan, Pierre Mathieu and Lucas Azoto. So a real mix of cars inside the top 10. Take a look inside the Ferrari 296 from CMR. And yes, that is the Alexis Berthet car that was originally going to be a Bentley Continental. I was going to wax lyrical for quite a bit of this weekend about the old Bentley factory program before it met its rather sad demise at the end of the 2020 season, but neither of the Bentleys are actually going to end up taking part in this one. One due to reliability, one due to a crash, which personally I'm very upset about, because I was very much looking forward to hearing that burbling V8 again. It was one of the biggest, baddest, meanest GT3 cars of its time, though I no doubt that we'll see some of them in the SRO Historic Series. Checkered flag out. Hugo Chevalier still circulating and lowering the benchmark, but he's got 1.5 seconds on Jimmy Lemunier. As Jérôme Andre has done a personal best as he met the checkered flag in the Mercedes. So 2:04.3, the best for him. So it's UCS1 cars 1, 2 and 3, then the Ferrari 296 Challenge of Lyle Schofield, Seb Lejeune in the Porsche Cup car, and the Super Trofeo of Maxime Lieutenant, the Henri Desertot Porsche Cup car that we're seeing now, and Olivier Morahan just moving up to 8th fastest. And he's really going to have his work cut out, actually, to make sure he seals the UCS1 championship this weekend. 16 points, as I said, over Gregoire Benedet. I suppose the saving grace for him in that one is actually going to be that the 438 has not been particularly reliable during the races we've seen that car out in. Speaking of which, where is the 430 on our map? think it actually ended up setting a competitive time. It's last, to put it mildly. So, still good news for Olivier Moynihan there. So it is Hugo Chevalier who banged in a 1:57.8 that last gas there to go 5.5 seconds quicker than Jimmy Lemunier and Jerome Andre. Lars Schofield in the 296 challenge, the best of the Ultimate Cavallino Tridente cars, and then Sébastien Loeb, the best of the Porsche Cup cars. Maxime Lieutenant, the best of the UCS 2 cars in the Super Trofeo, then Henri Desertot in the Porsche Cup car, Olivier Moynihan in his KRT Mercedes, Alexis Berthet in the Super Trofeo, and Lucas Azoto in the 296 challenge car, completing the top 10. Further down in UCS 3, that would be Romeo Lieu in his first appearance in a GT4 car, the French F4 convert, 16-year-old Frenchman, going best in 18th position overall, ahead of Laurent Prunet in the number 58 driven Porsche Cayman, ahead of Francois Denis, the speed car Audi, Pierre Aru in the Herrera Racing Audi, and then Frédéric Delpy in the JSR Experience Porsche Cayman. So 2 of the 981 cars, which, yeah, as I say, is the previous model from the 718, and from a time where GT4s were basically the road car with a roll cage and some slick tyres. It wasn't the most well thought of category of racing, but GT4 cars these days about as complicated as their superior GT3 counterparts. So great stuff from Romeo Lieu there. His teammate this weekend in that number 5 Mirage Racing Aston Martin GT4 Vantage is Laurence Oom, who is making his race debut this weekend. And it is the same car that was driven by David Levi and Jody Sloss in French GT4 this year, and also competed in the European GT4 Championship. And both of those series, Mirage Racing had an awful lot of success in with Stanislav Safronov and Alexandre Van Troub this season, winning both the French and GT4 European Series Pro-Am titles. So the cars getting ready for Q2. It will be, if they have them, the second drivers taking over. Of course, you do have the option to take part in all 4 races as a solo driver, or share the car for 2 races with someone else. It is only your 2 results that count towards the championship anyway. So Laurence Hume taking over from Romeo Lieu. Max Bortolami taking over from Jimmy Lemunier. Should be Alexandre Crowe taking over from Pierre Macchi. Laurent Roncaglia taking over from Jean-Paul Dominici. Then Eric Debard over Hugo Chevalier. Michael Ziegler in for Seb Lejoux. Jérôme Plantier for Maxime Lieutenant. Malone, and I apologize in advance if I butcher this name, Viela Cases in for Frédéric Desplis. And who else do we have? Simon Desertot in for Henry. And Emilio Rocci in for Fondi Maurizio. That should be the last one. David Fav, Lamborghini Huracan. Which we saw out in Magny-Cours last time out. So the car's waiting patiently at the end of pit lane. I feel like I need to keep talking over this music so we don't get a copyright strike on YouTube. Maybe we can start doing those TikTok trends of putting weird funky lines or doing random countdowns on the side to avoid copyright infringement. So Q2 underway. Another 15-minute session. So remember, this sets the grid for races 2 and 4. Again, your best time setting the grid for race 2, second best time for race 4. And the headlights starting to take over. Here as the sun sets, the floodlights already lit as the green flags are waved around the circuit. There is Pierre Arroux. Slight change in how the GT4 car has been categorized for this weekend. We did have a sort of separate category for the older machines, stuff like the 981s, for example, which would have been in UCS4, but we've grouped them together in UCS3 for this weekend, which is what has pretty much sealed the championship for Pierre Arroux in the UCS4 category. As I say, all but one of the championships sealed before we got going here this weekend. So it is the number 100 car that we see coming through Le Bousset. That's Lucas Azito, the Swiss racer, and familiar with this car from Ferrari Challenge competition. I do still find it somewhat mad. We have one make competition with cars that have, as near as makes no difference, 700 brake horsepower. A little bit of fine tuning on Lyle Schofield's car. Our UCS3 champion from last year in the 488 Challenge Evo. But a very different car, entirely new model. Ferrari introduced a couple of years ago. Certainly for the GT3 car. I can't remember if the Challenge car was a year later. Excuse me, that was actually Emilio Rocci. It was the 350, not the 353. Oh, excuse me. So the 888 car, Stéphane Perrin, now aboard the Seb Lejoux car. And yeah, I didn't think that that's an update to the entry list, because I didn't think that Seb Lejoux was down for GT Sprint. I do think he was down for GT Endurance, but there you go. So it looks like they are going to be sharing that car this weekend. Seb and Stefan recently completed their Creventic 24-hour series campaign with Paul Meyer, finishing second in the AM Championship for 992 Cup cars. See a bit of flame out the back of the Super Trofeo car. Do love seeing these machines out there. Another super high powered one make car. Bit of a wiggle there and a spin, in fact, for Lucas Azito, who was just about to complete his first flying lap of the session. And that has rather cooked that one. Takes the shortcut across the runoff area back onto the start and finish straight. That was just a little bit of rear end instability that then turned into a full-blown spin.
Be interesting for the race. It's the replay then.
Yeah, so you can see the little snap there, slight overcorrection.
It's always the overcorrection as it catches them out. It's going to be interesting for the race because this is a lot of cars in a very short race.
Yeah, so what will it be? 25 of them for a 25-minute race.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's a car a minute.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, if you think about it in the sprint racing we see in single-seaters, it feels a lot when there's 20 cars on the grid. 5 more out there.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a slightly different dynamic as well, because obviously in like the Formula Cup, for example, where everyone's using the same car, whereas here there is going to be several seconds a lap between the top and bottom class cars. And so we do see that the lappery is a big part of it. And you think about, you know, the DTM car, that's surely going to be, I would imagine it would lap almost the entire field in 25 minutes. So, but even if you're just in a GT3 car, you'll get round the lower class cars quite quickly. So through Le Bousset for Lucas Hazard. So it's Jerome Andre, who's fastest at the moment at 2:07.1, 4/10 quicker than the Super Trofeo of Alexis Berthet. And yeah, I was talking about the historic and race cars outfit, which is the historic arm of the Acodis ASP team, who of course used to run Mercedes machinery in SRO competition, which is where this car has come from. Of course, these days, very much more associated with the Lexus and Toyota brand, running the Lexus in the World Endurance Championship, and hopefully can give us a few secrets about whatever new car they're cooking up for next year, which Lexus has been very secretive about. That arm of the team led by Jim Pla, a multiple GT4 champion, racing in GT World Challenge Europe Simon Gachet this year. So purple in all 3 sectors for Jerome Andre last time around, lowers the benchmark to a 2:03.440. As we take a look at Patrick Michelier, who comes back to the championship in his 296 challenge car. It's a CMR car at the hands of the former GT2 European Series driver. And it is a stonking engine in that thing, the twin-turbo V6 that pumps out 690 horsepower. Spin for Michael Ziegler. So that's where the changes come in. So Seb Lejeune was originally due to share the car with Mike Ziegler, but is now sharing it with Stefan Perrin. So that's where that change has come in. Just a swap of cars for Seb Lejeune. RS01 Renault of Max Bortolami in 9th position at the moment. Used to seeing Max race in the Norma M20 in Ultimate Cup competition, also in the 24-hour series. Jerome Andre, fastest at the moment. Coming up behind one of the Ferrari Challenge cars. And again, despite having a superior car, it's not actually superior in a straight line, which can be one of the most frustrating things when you have these one-make cars. competing alongside GT3 machinery, because they are quicker than GT3 cars in a straight line, about 200 more horsepower. But it's in the corners where the difference will be made. Eric de Bard, meanwhile, going second fastest in the DTM car. So 2 seconds behind Jerome Andre. And I will admit, a lot of my TikTok feed has become old footage of the Class 1 DTM cars, which I could salivate over for months on end. 4 minutes left in the session. What's interesting, Lyle Schofield has not come out onto the track. I wonder if it's just a race 1 and 3 situation, or whether there is actually a problem on that 296. His first weekend in the car. I know Lyle wasn't feeling particularly well earlier on. I have invited him to the commentary box for the qualifying session for the Kennel GT Endurance Cup. Might have to rethink that, or put up a sort of COVID-esque plastic wall between us. Three minutes to go in the session then. Still Jerome Andre who leads this session, but now, well, right as I said it, Eric de Bard goes top by just over a tenth of a second. It's a 2:03.8. Eric de Bard, who, if memory serves correctly, sealed the Carrera Cup France Championship in his category at this track a few weeks ago. So congratulations to him, and to Hugo Chevalier, of course, as well, although he races himself in Carrera Cup for overall honours. I'm sure that as his coach, it was a team effort for Eric to win the AM Championship. Now, is this Lyle Schofield in 353? Yes, I believe it is. So it looks like he has managed to get out there onto the racetrack, as you can see the difference between a Porsche Cup car and a old GT4 Porsche. I won't be able to call it the GT3 Cup car next year, but they're renaming it when the new car comes out. I think it's the 992.2. I will be honest, Porsche's somewhat confused me with their namings for the 2026 versions of both their GT3 and their Cup car. So you see Olivier Morahan's KRT Mercedes. So we're used to seeing him in the Callaway Corvette, but as he did for this event last year, swapping it out for the Mercedes. So Lawrence Hume here as his first qualifying laps. Done plenty of track days has Lawrence, but evaluating his options for next year is the Briton. Got to meet him and his coach Max earlier today. Former Formula V racer is his coach, and I am a big fan of Formula V racing from my days as a 750 Motor Club correspondent. So Stefan Perrin here, second of the Porsche Cup runners, so it won't be back-to-back poles. That's for race 2 at the very least. We'll go to Simon Desertot in the Schumacher IMSA run car, the son of Franck Desertot, sharing the car with his brother Henri. Again, it's UCS 1 cars 1, 2 and 3, the same cars we saw before, actually in the same order, but Alexis Berthet, fourth fastest now in the Super Trofeo car ahead of Lucas Assetto in the 296 Challenge car. Slightly off-track moment there for Lawrence Hume, right as the checkered flag comes out. I hope that's not a mechanical issue that's taking him off the road there. That will be most of the cars heading back into pit lane now, as you see the speed car Audi of Francois Denis. Lovely to have him back in the championship with us, as the darkness really starting to descend over Circuit Paul Ricard now. Take a snapshot from the start of the broadcast and just see the difference. A little bit of assistance potentially required in pushing that Audi back. Make sure it's in gear. There we go. Late spin. So the Lawrence Hume moving slowly because of a spin up at Le Bousset. Potentially coming up Scene Corner. Now that will have caught his attention. Yellow flags now waving up at turn 12, which is the subsequent left-hander after Le Bousset. And those yellows are still waving, in fact. Checkered flag out, and Eric Debard fastest. Ahead of Jerome Andre and Olivier Morahan. So as expected, back-to-back poles for the Racetivity Run DTM car. No lap time there for Lyle Schofield. I will go and just ask about that after the session, see if that was the plan for him to only run in 2 of the races. Oh, Shepherd's Delight out there, but it's Eric Debard fastest, Jerome Andre and Olivier Morahan, 2 Mercedes, well actually 3 Mercedes of different classes, but 3 Mercedes at the head of the field. Alexis Berthet in the Super Trofeo, Lucas Assetto in the Ferrari Challenge car, Jean Plantier in another of the Super Trofeos, Patrick Michelier in another Ferrari Challenge car. Simon Desiteau, the best of the Porsche Cup cars, ahead of his class rival Stéphane Perrin, and Alexandre Crowe in the Super Trofeo, completing the top 10. Franck Bellard completing the top 3 in the Porsche Cup category. Max Bortolami and David Favre in the UCS1 cars. Then in UCS3, Francois Denis taking pole for speed car in the 555 Audi, ahead of Laurent Prunet in the 58 Porsche. And then third was Pierre Aru in his Herrero Racing Audi. With no times set for Lyle Schofield, though, in that one. So that is all from qualifying. The first of the 4 races gets underway at 8:55 tonight. We'll see you for that one.